Night shift facilities work at a logistics firm downtown meant spending most of your hours alone with a badge and a set of keys, moving between floors that other people had already gone home from. 6 months in, I still hadn't needed the service elevator once. Everything I moved fit in the freight cart or went up the passenger lift with everyone else during the day. That changed on a Thursday in March, when the passenger lift was locked out for a fire inspection, and a new server rack needed to go up to the support team on the 5th floor before morning. The ride up, I remember, began completely unremarkable. That's the part that gets me now. Nothing about the elevator itself was strange. It was when the car inexplicably stopped 1 floor short that it started. The panel lit up with a 4. The doors opened, but the floor in front of me was the 5th. Customer support was indeed on 5. 40 desks, always loud even at odd hours because someone was covering an overseas shift. I'd been up there a dozen times, but right now I was stopped on 4, and it looked like an absolute, flawless copy of 5. With one difference. The lights were on full brightness, every monitor glowing blue-white across the floor. And there was no one there, not one person, no chair pushed out, no jacket on a hook. Just the hum of 40 idle computers and a silence so complete it felt like physical pressure against my eardrums. One hand on the door frame, I stood in the doorway and didn't step out. My phone said 2:14 in the morning. My coworker, Ferris, was supposed to be on shift up in support right then, so I decided to text him just to ask why the hell the 4th floor looked exactly like his. Still holding the door frame, still not stepping fully onto the carpet, I stood there and typed the message. And while I was typing, the doors closed on their own. I hadn't touched a button. The car lifted smoothly 1 level, and the doors opened on the real 5th floor. A skeleton crew at their desks, Ferris at his, headphones on, waving at me without looking up. I rolled the server rack out into the corridor and convinced myself I was just hallucinating from exhaustion. The work got done, eventually. The rack had a wiring issue, and I ended up spending nearly the rest of my shift right there on 5, fixing it. When it was finished, instead of waiting for the elevator, I took the stairs down to 4, meaning to check that floor in the logic of daylight, in real footsteps. The stairwell door on 4 didn't open onto 40 desks and bright monitors. It opened onto exposed subfloor, plastic sheeting taped over half the ceiling, and the smell of fresh drywall dust and cut wire. A full gut renovation. I walked the length of it in the beam of my flashlight, and there wasn't a single intact desk standing. Looking back, I realize I just forced myself to believe the renovation had somehow started in the middle of my shift. I knew it was physically impossible. Renovations don't happen between one elevator ride and the next. But it was still more believable than what I had actually seen, so I chose the lie that would let me sleep. 5 nights later, it happened again. I was moving 2 boxes of replacement drives up to storage on the 6th floor, cart loaded, badge in my teeth. The doors opened early on 4, and it was the anomaly again. The empty, lit support floor, humming with that same pressurized silence. This time I didn't just stand there. I wedged one of the boxes into the door track so the elevator couldn't close, and I stepped all the way out onto the carpet. The floor felt exactly like a floor should. I walked maybe 20 feet toward the desks, close enough to see a monitor still logged into someone's dashboard, and a half-eaten granola bar sitting on a keyboard. Then I stopped. I went to the stairwell at the end of the hall, intending to walk up 1 flight to 5 and look down at the elevator bank, just to force the geography to make sense. The stairwell door on 5 opened. I stepped out, looked toward the elevator bank, and my mind simply stalled. The box was there, my box, wedged in the door track exactly where I'd left it. The same lights were humming. I hadn't bypassed the floor. I had looped right back into it. The stairs were just another door into the exact same room. I didn't panic right away. The wrongness of it was too massive for panic. Heart hammering against my ribs, I crept out of the stairwell. I approached the wedged doors, pulled the box inside with shaking hands, slammed the close button, and hit 6. The doors shut, the car lifted smoothly, and it opened on the real, mundane 6th floor. Dark, quiet, and normal. Only one person heard about it from me, Duane, an older guy who'd done building maintenance there longer than anyone. I caught him on a break and told him everything, expecting him to laugh. He didn't laugh. Duane set his thermos down, stared at his calloused hands for a long moment, and then raised a heavy look to me. His Adam's apple bobbed. "If it ever happens again," he rasped, grabbing my shoulder, "you don't move. You don't try to shut the doors. You don't breathe. You stand perfectly still, and you let the elevator think it's empty." He looked around the loading dock like someone might hear us. About 10 years ago, a guy saw the same thing. He was told this rule, but one morning, the elevator came down to the lobby with him inside. Only he wasn't in one piece anymore. He was torn apart, teeth and claws. He paused, and I watched the color drain from his face. By the timestamps, the elevator never stopped. 11 seconds of transit, top to bottom. Lobby footage shows him walking into an empty car alone. Whatever got him was waiting somewhere. Time doesn't work. And you know, in the police photos, his face didn't look surprised. It looked like he'd been waiting in the dark for a very, very long time. For weeks after that, I kept away from the service elevator. Then there was a holiday party on the 2nd floor, catering, and a couple of drinks too many. When I was leaving, professional habit kicked in. Instead of walking to the main stairwell, I drifted toward the service elevator on pure autopilot. I remember pulling the doors open, laughing at something. The doors closed. And then, with a jolt of ice water that sobered me instantly, I realized the car was moving upward, and I hadn't pressed a button. I slammed every button on the panel at once, trying to stop it, and it did nothing. The car kept climbing, smooth and unbothered. I stood very still and prayed in the plain, wordless way you do when you don't actually believe in anything until you have to. The doors opened on 4, lit, humming, empty. The granola bar on the keyboard was gone this time. Something had eaten it and left the wrapper flattened and licked clean. Sound reached me before sight did. A wet, heavy sound of flesh dragging itself forward on more limbs than it needed, absolutely unhurried. 2 seconds to make a choice. There was nowhere to run. The stairs just fed back into the nightmare. I didn't step out. Instead, I pressed myself flat against the inside wall of the elevator car, right beneath the button panel, wedging myself into the absolute blind spot from the corridor. The cold steel chilled the sweat on my back. I stopped breathing. I tried to become part of the wall. From my hiding spot, I could only see a narrow slice of the lit aisle. It stayed low to the ground, its body impossibly long, its head swinging side to side the way something reads a room by smell. Its mouth hung open well past where a jaw should anatomically stop. The ends of its limbs weren't hands at all, but 4 black points on each, raking thin lines into the carpet with every agonizing step. It wasn't looking at me, but I knew it was searching for whatever had brought the elevator to its floor. I dug my fingernails into my palms. Right beside my head, the elevator initiated its automated sequence. A soft, mundane chime. That sound changed everything. The creature's head snapped toward the noise. It was a full, scrambling sprint down the aisle, coming directly at the car. The doors began sliding shut. I watched the gap narrow, watched that ragged jaw closing the distance, heard the frantic thud of its limbs vibrating through the floorboards. I squeezed my eyes shut. The doors met flush. The car jerked and began a smooth descent. When the doors finally opened on the ground floor, I stumbled out into the lobby and didn't stop walking until I pushed through the front glass doors. The freezing night air hit my face, smelling of exhaust and wet asphalt. And I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, just letting the real world anchor me to the ground. 2 weeks later, I quit. Different city, different building, a job that ends at 6 in the evening. The elevator, whatever it was, belonged to that place, I told myself. Yesterday, at the new office, I needed something from storage on the 3rd floor. The doors opened. The floor was lit. The floor was silent. Every monitor glowing, every chair pushed in like people had simply stopped existing mid-shift. The only thing different from before was scored into the drywall along the far corridor. 4 parallel gouges dragged the length of the wall, deep enough to show the gleaming metal studs underneath. On the floor below, the gouges lay a dusting of fine, unsettled white powder. And then, from the depths of the lit aisle, came a slow, wet sound.